to design their online courses before becoming an instructional designer at QM. And one other thing that I forgot to mention is if anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type those into the questions panel, and we will have a Q&A portion after the session, or I will just answer your questions directly into the panel. So Jillian, if you're ready, I can go ahead and give you the screen.
Yes, please. Okay, Sarah, can you see the screen there, my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So General Standard 1 is about course overviews and introductions. And this standard is all about making sure that the overall design of your course is clear to students at the start of the course. So as instructors designing our course, our job is to set the tone for the course, let the students know what to expect, and make sure they get off to a good start. And in the face-to-face classroom, we might usually do this, at least in higher education in my experience, on the first day of class by greeting our students as they enter the room and then introducing ourselves and asking our students to do the same, then going over the syllabus with them and giving them a walkthrough of the course. But in the online environment where you're not physically present to do that, you might be wondering what's the best way or what's at least one way that you can do that in your online course. So one way that I'm going to show you today is you could create a soft chalk lesson such as this one here on the screen, which was created by Loretta Driscoll to introduce her Principles of Computer Security course to students. I'm going to put the link in the chat here and see if Sarah can make sure that gets to the participants, because you can look at this link, you can look at this lesson on your own time. If I go too fast over anything during the presentation today and you want to return to this lesson to look at something in more detail, you can do so at any time. So that link is in the chat, and I will be demonstrating here some of the best practices that I see in this lesson. But before I begin highlighting some of the neat things that Loretta has done in this lesson, I want to emphasize something about the QM rubric, and that's the fact that the rubric is not intended to be prescriptive. This means that there are many different ways that you can meet the standards, and we're by no means saying that your course introduction has to look exactly like this in order to meet those QM standards. But I think that Loretta's example here does a really nice job of using the capabilities of SoftChalk to provide students with the kind of course overview and introduction that the Quality Matters Standards looks for. So that's why we chose to showcase it today as our example of best practices for using both SoftChalk and Quality Matters General Standard 1. Okay, so that being said, we're on the first page of the lesson, and the first thing that I notice here, and that I would suggest you might consider trying in your course as a best practice, would be to use the table of contents feature. A table of contents does two things for us. First of all, it gives students an overview of the lesson. It enables them to see at a glance the topics that are going to be covered, so they know exactly what to expect in that lesson. Secondly, the table of contents makes each page and even each topic on each page into a link that the students can select to navigate directly to information that might be of particular interest to them at any point in time. So for instance, end of the semester comes around, students might be interested in knowing what their final grade is going to be. They could return to this lesson here and easily navigate to the final grade scale, which I'll click on the link here, and that will take them to the final grades page in this lesson. Okay, so table of contents is an effective strategy for navigation to key information, as well as giving an overview of what's going to be in that lesson. But we're going to go back to the table of contents and go through this lesson in order, so let me return there and start with the Welcome to CIS 205 page right here. And the page loads here, and one of the first things we see on it is a video. So as another best practice that you might want to try in your own course would be to include a brief video in which you welcome students to the course and tell them a little bit about what they're going to learn in the course and how it will apply to them and what the course is going to be like. This is helping to set the positive tone for the course and establishing your instructor presence in the course. We're not going to actually watch this video, but you could again look at it on your own to get a sense of what Loretta has done here and what you might do as well, and put your own flair on it depending on how your course works. Now we also see on this page something that I think is pretty neat, and that's this Quiz Me icon here. So if you use SoftChalk, you know that you can embed these little quiz self-check questions right on the page. And many instructors I know will use a syllabus quiz after students read the syllabus to confirm students' understanding of critical information. But what I think is neat about this lesson is that Loretta's embedded some questions right into the context of the page itself. So you can use these self-checks to draw students' attention to the most important points you want them to know at that point in the course. For instance, the way you might do in a face-to-face class by raising your voice or pausing for emphasis. And you can also use these self-checks to prep students for a syllabus quiz. So you can use them in conjunction with a syllabus quiz, which is another best practice we often see in course intros and overviews. So when I click on this Quiz Me question here, the student sees a question and they can answer true or false, check their answer, and get some feedback. So I think that's a nice use of self-checks in a syllabus, in a course overview or introduction. Okay, continuing on, the next page will load here. Now we see the instructor's contact information, basic information there, very important to include, but we also see an explanation of the different modes of communication in the course, the different ways that students can communicate with the instructor. And again, we have a Quiz Me self-check, which when we click on this one, tests students on the best way to contact Loretta. And as a best practice in your course, you certainly want to let students know about all of the different modes of communication available in the course. But it's also a really good idea to let them know what the best mode of communication is, because then they can reach out to you in that way first and be more likely to connect with you quicker and get their issue resolved and be able to succeed in the course. So by including this little Quiz Me here, Loretta's emphasized the best way to contact me is by phone. That's actually false. And so now the student hopefully will remember throughout the course, send an Angel course mail message. And I'm going to load the next page there. It might be a little slow, so hopefully I'll catch up there. All right, we're on course objectives. And there's an entire QM standard, of course, for learning objectives. But in terms of a course overview and introduction, putting those objectives into your course overview and introduction is important, certainly a best practice that I would recommend, because it lets students know really what the scope of that course is and what they're going to need to be able to do by the end of that course. And on this page here we have the course description. So again, some information about the course, typical of what you might see in a syllabus, but here for the student to review, also to have interactive checks at different points. And on the next page we have the required course materials. So certainly something that's typically included in a syllabus. Here we have a visual of the cover of the textbook to help students recognize it, and information about where they can go to purchase it and that they're going to need it right away. So giving this information to the students at the beginning of the course is standard practice, certainly best practice, so that the student can have what they need right away to be successful. But particularly in an online course where we have maybe some software that's required to be successful later on in the course, letting students know what's required up front so they can get that loaded on their system right away so that they're not having problems when they actually do need it is important. And then if there's anything like here, we see headset or earphones are recommended. So if there are technical resources or supplies that the students need, best practice to let them know up front that those are needed. Okay, so students know what's expected, they're getting prepared for the course so that they get off to a good start and don't find out later down the road, oh no, I needed something and I now have to hurry and rush in order to get that. And moving to the next page here, this is something I really like about this lesson and would suggest as certainly a best practice for using images in SoftTalk or using a video. So here we have a description of the course organization, and Loretta's included a picture of the course homepage. So what I would suggest you consider doing is something like this. Whatever your course homepage looks like in your learning management system, put a picture of it there for students to see along with a textual explanation of why it's structured that way. Yes, students will certainly see this when they go into the course. They've probably already seen it before they've gotten to this lesson, but now they have the benefit of your explanation of why you chose to structure your course in this way and what they're going to find. So some instructors will do this using like a video demonstration, a video tour of the course. Here we've got a picture with some description in text format. And on the next page, we have even more detailed information. So on this page, Loretta's giving us a big picture sense of how the course is laid out. Then on the next page, she gives us specific information about what's going to happen in each module, what the learning activities are going to be. So we know that there are going to be terms to know, so we expect to look for those when we log into our first module. As students, we know there's going to be readings, and we have some information from our instructor why those readings are important. We know there's going to be quizzes. We know there's going to be an on-the-job discussion forum that we're going to have to participate in. We also know that there will be a blog assignment and a team project. So I like this prepping of the student to know what to expect when they go into those modules, because now that they know from this course overview and introduction what that structure is going to look like, they can focus more on the actual content and learning objectives for that module when they get into it, rather than trying to figure out how the module's structured by just getting thrown right into it. They've got some preparation and expectation here. Okay, moving to the next page, here's the information about grades. So certainly best practice to include information about your grading in a course overview or introduction. We all know students are very concerned about how their grade will be calculated, and there are specific QM standards that relate to grades, but in terms of a course overview or introduction, putting that information as part of your course overview and introduction lets students know up front how their grade's going to be calculated, what they need to do to earn a certain letter grade. As we discussed at the very beginning of the presentation, if they want to come back to this information, they can, certainly, but knowing it up front helps them know what to expect. We also have here in the intro the discussion forum rubric for the on-the-job discussion. So students, again, have that in mind when they actually get to that point in the course. And on the next page here, Loretta has included the disability disclosure information. Again, QM has standards specific to accessibility, but there are certain things you would definitely want to include in a course overview or introduction, such as this information about accessibility services. Makes sense to have that information here so that students can get that information early on, take advantage of any resources that are available to them so that they can be successful throughout the course. Setting the stage for good student success in the course is what the course overview and intro is all about. And on the next page here, we have a course expectations page. So certainly, you know, in a course overview and introduction that's all about setting expectations, makes sense to have this course expectation information here. So there's a lot of information on this page. I'll leave it up here, you know, for a little bit as I talk about it so that you can read it. But again, remember you have the link in the chat that you could go back and look at this in more detail on. What we have here is some information about, you know, online classes and time commitment. Really important to stress that to students who might think that it's going to take them less time to complete the online course than it would otherwise. One of the things I like in particular about this page is how Loretta structured it in terms of what I expect from you and what you can expect from me. I see this a lot of times with instructors. They'll set it up in this way, and I like it because it sets up that reciprocal relationship between the teacher and the student. So certainly we have expectations of our students, and these are listed here. Expectations in terms of when to log in, you know, writing skills and use of chat-like text, you know, proper grammar, spelling, etc. Different etiquette rules fall under this heading here. And you can see what Loretta has provided for her students specific to her class. And then under the heading of what you can expect from me, the students find out what they can expect from their instructor, when the instructor will log in, about roughly when assignments will be graded and returned, and also information about not being available 24/7. This is really important because sometimes students, especially those who are new to online learning, don't know what to expect from an online course, and they don't have the benefit of having, you know, years of being in the face-to-face mode, knowing kind of how it goes to go on. So expectations are important in any class, but I would say particularly important to emphasize in an online class. Okay. And on the next page, again, you can look at that on the link in more detail. There's a lot of text there, but a lot of important text, so it makes sense to have that information there for students. And on the last page then, we are at sort of the end of our course overview and introduction, at least in terms of this lesson. And on this page, students are given instructions on what to do next in order to really get started with the course. So yes, they've kind of gotten started with the course already by virtue of doing this course overview and introduction lesson. However, it's really just the prep work for the actual learning module. So having a Your Next Steps page in your lessons would be a good best practice to follow definitely in your course overview and introduction lesson, since students who are new to this course are not going to be likely to know exactly what they're supposed to do next without some direction. You know, in the face-to-face classroom, at the end of the class session, you would say, okay, class is over, go home, read your textbook chapter 1 for homework, take some notes, come back, and the next day we're going to discuss such and such a topic. In the online classroom, we can do this sort of transition by having the Your Next Steps page, which Loretta has done here. So the students are directed of the first thing they should do next, the second thing they should do next. Again, some of these are sort of logistical things. Familiarize yourself with Communicate tab, comments and grades and whatnot. And then in the fifth step, really finally get started by participating in the first learning module. So this gets them into the first learning module where they're going to actually really begin the course. So definitely something you would want to consider doing for your course overview and intro to point the students to really what they should do next, but also something you might consider doing in any of your course lessons as you go through the course. In fact, if you've ever attended any Quality Matters professional developments, we use SoftChalk for our content lessons, and at the end of each of our lessons we have a Your Next Steps page that tells the learner what to do next, so you know what to do next in the course, and you have that guidance. It's all about guiding the student what to do next. And at the bottom there we have just a little note, a positive ending, positive tone to the overview and introduction. Have a successful semester. Okay, so hopefully, after reading this lesson as a student, you would feel excited about beginning the course. You have that positive tone. You would know how to begin the course, and you would have an idea of what to expect. Okay. So to summarize some of the best practices that I mentioned in this tour of Loretta's course overview and introduction, first and foremost, overall, you can use SoftChalk to create a first day walkthrough of your course. So just using SoftChalk to create that first day walkthrough would be one option for creating your course overview and intro. And then within SoftChalk, or whatever tool you might choose to use, if there's a table of contents feature, use that to create an overview of the lesson and facilitate navigation to the important information. Another best practice, whatever tool you're using or however you structure your overview and intro, embedding a brief video of yourself welcoming the students can help to set a good tone for the course, as well as convey important information. Using self-check opportunities, such as the ones that are available in SoftChalk, to reinforce key points and confirm the student understanding throughout the lesson is something really neat that I particularly liked about this lesson here. You can also insert a picture of the main content area of your course along with a description of what the students will find in each area, so giving them the big picture and then drilling down into what they'll find in each module, as we saw in this lesson. And then finally, listing the next steps on the last page of your lesson to guide students on what it is they should do next. So they're not just hanging out there at the end of the lesson wondering what it is that they should do next. You provide them with that guidance. So to conclude my presentation and to transition to any questions you might have, General Standard 1, Course Overview and Introduction Standard, is all about making sure that the overall design of the course is clear to students at the start of the course. And as instructors, our job is to set the tone for the course, let students know what to expect, and make sure they get off to a good start. And again, I want to emphasize that Quality Matters is not prescriptive, and there are many different ways to meet the standards. But I really think this example did a really nice job of using SoftChalk's capabilities to provide students with the kind of overview and introduction that would fit the spirit of the Quality Matters standards for General Standard 1. And that is why we chose to share it with you today as our example, so that you could see some of these things in action and get some ideas of what you might do in your own course. So at this point, I want to open the floor to questions. I don't know if any have come in, Sarah, during the presentation that either I or yourself could answer.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had muted myself. So Heather asks, will this standard have anything new added to it with the new rubric coming out late this summer?
We won't know until it comes out later this summer. August 1st is the date. I believe that it will come, that we're targeting for it to come out, the rubric, and the committee is still working on that. So we really, won't know or be able to tell you until that new rubric actually comes out.
Okay. And then Laura asks, is there a publication that you can provide that provides definitions and explanations of the QM standards?
There is on the Quality Matters website, the general standards are listed. Subscribers have access to the rubric through their subscribing institution.
And I can share a link to the QM website also.
Okay.
But do you maybe want to talk a little bit about the subscription, like maybe what instructors would benefit from having a subscription rather than just reading the definitions of the standards?
Sure, yeah. The subscription enables you to see the fully annotated rubric, which is truly the full description and definition of the standards. So the annotations in the fully annotated version of the rubric, which is available to subscribers, the specific standards within each general standard are listed, and those are accompanied by an annotation which more fully explains what the standard is about, what reviewers would look for in conducting a peer review of the course, and some examples of what are there. So that's a benefit of being a subscriber, and that's available to subscribers, where you can see the more detailed definitions and examples of those annotations.
Okay, great. We have a couple questions about you mentioned instructors making a video. So Debbie asks, would you recommend each instructor record their own video? And if so, have you encountered any challenges with this?
Yeah, in terms of recording a video, if each instructor for each course did want to record a video, it is something as an instructional designer I often, would recommend to my faculty. Not something, again, required by the rubrics. The rubric's not prescriptive, but if some faculty members really enjoy being on video and want to record their video in that way, others would prefer maybe just a picture with a text description. If you do record a video, there can be some challenges with technology, making sure you've got the right format. So working with any tech people on campus is helpful to make sure that that video is in a good format to be playable across multiple devices that students might be using to access the online course. And also, if you do a video, you would want to include a transcript or preferably caption that video to ensure accessibility. So, video can be tricky sometimes because it's a little bit more technology, but I think it, for some faculty, works really well because they can get across their personality. They like it because it gets across their personality.
And then we have one question. So she said, for the example that you just shared, would you recommend that most introductions and overviews be this length, or is there maybe a maximum length that you would recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me pull that back up here. I think I'm still sharing my screen here. So we've got about 11 pages. My recommendations when it comes to design and length is make it as long as it needs to be. I know that's not always a clear-cut answer, but I think too long can sometimes be too long, and too short can be too short. This seems to be a nice length. I think you can go through that in, a decent amount of time, maybe 15 minutes if you're a student, or 15 to 30 minutes really focusing on it, but as long as it needs to be. So the table of contents helps with organizing the information in it. So if you have a lot of information that's going to take a long time to go through, I think that's okay, but it should be organized in a way that facilitates getting through all of that information. And you can certainly break some things up. Maybe some of this information may be included in a separate document that you hand out. In fact, I think in Loretta's course, she didn't include the course schedule in this course overview here. She included that as a separate document because it made more sense, because that might be something the students would print out. So you can pick and choose some information that you're going to include in your course overview and introduction that you do in a lesson like this, but you might have some additional information in the form of separate documents or resources that are part of a course information folder, a whole folder in your course for the Getting Started course overview and introduction, of which a lesson like this is just one part that covers the things that you as an instructor would kind of verbally go through if you were doing this on your first day overview versus handing out something to the students.
That does make sense. Also, Franz asks, is this a good place to encourage students to also introduce themselves, as well as for the instructor to introduce themselves or introduce other students?
In a course introduction and overview, like in a folder, sure, I think you could certainly include your discussion forum in that course introduction and overview. In a soft talk lesson like this, I think what we see here at the end is on the Your Next 5 Steps page, Loretta instructs them to go do that in the communicate area of the course. So in the soft talk lesson, or in a lesson like this, there's not really a mechanism for the students to introduce themselves because they can't add content to the lesson. The instructor could certainly introduce themselves here as part of the course overview and welcome, maybe have a whole page about yourself. Loretta had a little bit of information about herself in this course, which she might supplement elsewhere with a more detailed instructor introduction. But I think you can certainly introduce yourself as the instructor in a lesson like this, and then point the students to where they should go to introduce themselves to their classmates, which might be a forum that you've set up within the folder or the module that you're using for all of your course overview and introduction information, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. There were also a couple questions that came in again regarding the video that we had been talking about. So a couple people are asking how long an introduction video should be if they are to record an intro video.
Sure. QM doesn't specify anything like length in its standards because it's again not prescriptive, and from my own personal instructional design experience, again, I would say as long as it needs to be. There is some research out there about making videos shorter, and in general I lean towards not making it too long, because an hour-long video might be a really long period of time. Again, not being prescriptive, maybe 2 to 5 minutes for an intro of just introducing yourself as an instructor. And I think if I do an introduction of myself and I'm telling people about my background and who I am, it might take me about 2 to 5 minutes to do that. On Loretta's video here, let's see, she was just giving a really brief intro about the course and kind of a welcome, hello, how are you, here's how you get started, and that was about a minute long. So it depends on exactly what you're covering in that video, and there's a balance that you want to strike between too much and too little. So when doing videos, when doing instructional videos, I try to chunk my videos into a little bit more discrete concepts. So that way, if I had an hour-long video of instruction, maybe I'm doing 4 or 5 videos within that hour-long period to cover different concepts. But you can also go, to the other end of the spectrum and get too chunked down and too short. So it's all about taking a look at what you're trying to address and grouping that into a logical amount of content, and however long that takes you then to do, that's how long it takes you to do. So again, that's my kind of wishy-washy answer that it depends, but I think that shorter is generally better, but you can get too short as well. You don't want to go too far on either extreme.
And kind of relating to that, so Jarrett mentions that he's heard some people using the videos to introduce themselves, whereas others use it to go over general information for the course, sort of in place of the syllabus. So do you have a preference on which is better for instructors?
No, personally, no. I think both would be great in terms of QM standards. Both would, be okay because again, it's not prescriptive. So an introduction of yourself might be one video, and then an introduction of the course could be another video. Both are good ways to connect with students. And if you have the capability to do it and you're comfortable doing it, and you find that that works well for your students as a means of getting across the course, I think that's great. I think, video is a good way to introduce the instructor because you see like the live person in front of you. It makes you a real human being. But I think you can also get that across in the form of like a picture with accompanied text as well. So it really comes down to, I think, what you're comfortable with, what works well for your class, but something that I would recommend trying. If you've never tried doing a video before, give it a shot and see how that works for you.
And then Kate asks, and I think a few people are wondering, how do you ensure that students actually read all of the content? So for a lesson such as this, where it's 11 pages, how would you ensure that? And I guess because Loretta has the quiz questions and stuff, that's a good way. So maybe if you wanted.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Just because you put it there doesn't mean that the students are actually going to read it. And that's where a lot of times I see a faculty member use a syllabus quiz afterward. So this is kind of a lot of the information here would be like in a syllabus or in another format. So a strategy that many of the faculty I've worked with will use that seems to be successful for them is to have a syllabus quiz whereby either the students get some points for completing it as one incentive for ensuring that they do actually read the course material that you've provided in your overview or intro. Or another strategy, again, different ways to do different things, is some faculty would restrict the first module in the course from opening up until students achieved a certain score on that syllabus quiz. So maybe you have to get 100% or at least a 90%, whatever it is, up to you, before students can proceed with the course is one way you can try to highly encourage the students to read the information in a document such as this. And the Quiz Me questions here certainly, could prep the student with the kind of questions that they're going to get on that actual syllabus quiz. And in addition to helping make sure they've read the syllabus, a quiz like that is also, especially if you give them multiple attempts, which I would recommend on the syllabus quiz because the goal is that they read it and get the information. It can also help the students get practice taking a quiz in the system before they actually have to take a quiz for the course content itself. So that's one way to encourage students to read the content. It's the most popular way. I'm trying to think of any others that I've heard of, and certainly if other folks have some that they can post in the chat. It's a great question that many faculty do struggle with, so the more we can share our tips for resolving that issue, the better.
And we have a question from Maria. From your experience as an instructional designer, can you propose any effective ice-breaking activity that you might want to include in an introduction?
Okay, icebreakers. The one that I've always found kind of fun about as a student, I know when I was a student in one of my programs that was online, we did something like this, is you might have heard of it before, it's the post 3 things about yourself, one of which isn't true. It's kind of a neat way to learn something sort of different or unique about other folks, and you have to guess what's true or what's not. And you also have to then think about yourself, and it kind of is exciting to think, oh, well, maybe I've done something really crazy that you would think, I skydived or something, skydove, that no one would think that I actually did, but now they know about that. So I remember that one from when I was a student myself. You can also give students the option to post their introduction in a format other than text if you want. So, you can pose sort of standard questions, where are you from? What are you looking to learn in this course? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your experience with the subject matter? And they can type that back, but you can also encourage students, if they wanted to create a video to post that back, they could do that. If they wanted to create a Prezi about themselves or create a graphic, artistic representation of themselves. Some different ways to kind of let the students show their creativity is, if you're open to that, I think students appreciate that, and it can kind of liven up the standard text-based discussion approach.
I did have actually a couple questions come in about soft chalk, so I'll just mention that the lesson that Jillian shared, which was Loretta's lesson, it was created in Soft Chalk Cloud, which is how everyone is able to access it through the link. Loretta made it public so anyone can access it, and she shared it in our Learning Object repository, which is called Soft Chalk Share. And SoftChalk is available in the cloud, which is available through web launch. So if you have a subscription to the cloud, then you can launch it anywhere from any computer. And we also have a desktop application called SoftChalk Create. And if you have any questions on SoftChalk sales, or if you're interested maybe in requesting a demo, you can send an email to sales@softchalk.com, and someone will definitely get back to you answering questions about that. Oh, and we have a couple people who put some examples of good icebreakers. Kathleen writes, a good icebreaker is, say you are being transferred to an isolated island for work. You're only allowed to take a cigar box to take what you want with you. What items would you take with you? So that's a good one.
That's cool.
And then Kelly also shared that she did an icebreaker that was start the year off with a bang, and she added a clip from the Big Bang Theory show that was relevant to the course objectives, and the kids had a blast with it. And then Kelly also mentioned that if you just Google, you'll be able to find a lot of icebreakers also. So thank you, thank you guys for sharing those. That's great.
Definitely, thank you.
And if we do have a little bit more time, so if anyone does have any questions, feel free to type those in. I feel like we've answered the majority of them. Jillian, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Maybe, I know you. you concluded. Let's see.
Yeah, just want to thank again Loretta Driscoll for allowing us to showcase, her work. I think it's a good example of a course overview or introduction, and that hopefully it gave the folks that are attending today some ideas that they might want to try in their own course.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Jillian, for presenting today. I'd also like to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and a recording will be sent out to everyone later this week. So if you want to go back and listen to it again, you will receive a link to the recording. So at this point, I'll take back the screen and share our closing slides.
Okay, let me...
And again, thanks so much, Jillian, for presenting, and thank you for Loretta. I know she was on the call earlier, and she really appreciated us sharing her lesson. But so the examples that we shared today and that future presenters will share throughout the series, as Jillian said, they represent how these users took a Quality Matters standard and adapted it into a best practice that fit their unique situation. So it's not intended at all to be a specific case for everyone. So it's basically just however the practice fits into your unique situation. And we also encourage everyone to share their own best practices in online course design with us by tweeting at SoftChalk or at QM Program. And you can use the hashtag SCQMBP, which is hashtag SoftChalk Quality Matters Best Practices. So if you oh, sorry, the hashtag is wrong on the screen. It's actually hashtag SCQMBP. I messed that up on the screen, but I will send that out in the chat as well. So if you use the hashtag, you never know, we might end up sharing some of your comments and best practices on our webpage or even at our conferences this fall. And also keep a lookout for our upcoming webinars in the series. I will send out a link to our best practices landing page also, where you can find registration links for upcoming webinars and other information regarding the series. We do have one webinar scheduled each month from now until September. We do have a webinar for July also, which was just scheduled, which is not on the list, but if you go to our website, you will be able to access those, and you will be able to very soon register for the webinar coming up in May. And if you'd like more information about today's best practice, you can contact Jillian, Jillian at qualitymatters.org. Or if you have any questions about SoftChalk or would like more information about SoftChalk, you can email us at learnmore@softchalk.com, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And again, thank you so much, Jillian, for presenting, and to Loretta for sharing her lesson, and everyone for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the webinar. And I'll just end with this slide again. So just remember that best practices represent one way to do things, and to be sure that the practice fits your situation. And like I said, if you want, feel free to share your own tips and best practices. I know we had a lot of great comments in the chat window today. So if you are on Twitter, feel free to share those with us, and we will make sure that everyone gets to see all of your tips. So have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you.